Hi, it's Scott from MoneyNerd, and for those that don't know, we use insider knowledge to help people beat debt collectors and become debt-free. In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to deal with Robinson Way debt collectors. You probably received a letter from Robinson Way or even had them knocking at your door. When I had debt collectors chasing me back in 2010, it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety, and to be frank, plenty of sleepless nights. But since then, I've worked in the credit card industry for over 10 years, and I'm happy to say I've been able to use my insider knowledge to help myself out of debt and to help thousands of other people out of debt. So today, I'd like to share that knowledge by answering 5 frequently asked questions, such as: are Robinson Way legitimate? How to reduce your repayment amounts? How to stop Robinson Way from contacting you? What happens if you ignore them? And what they're not allowed to do when they're collecting your debt. At the end of this video, I have a bonus tip on how you can write off some of your debt, so stick around to the end. Okay, question number 1. Are Robinson Way even legitimate? Well, if you've received a letter in the post, this is probably your first question. If you don't recognize the company name, it might be that they've purchased your debt or they're a debt collector collecting on behalf of another company. I can confirm that Robinson Way is a UK registered company, and whilst there are a bunch of scams out there when it comes to debt collectors, I'm afraid this is unlikely to be a scam. However, you should never pay unless you're certain that the debt is yours. You're well within your rights to ask Robinson Way to provide proof that the debt is yours. I have a free letter template that you can use to confirm that the debt is yours and confirm how much you owe. It's totally free, and I'll link that in the description below. Okay, question number 2. What happens if you ignore Robinson Way? Well, if you ignore debt collectors, your problem could escalate and become very serious. Robinson Way does have the right to take court action against you, and if you were to ignore court letters, you could end up with a county court judgment, or what you might recognize as a CCJ. This can have a major impact on your credit score and your chances of borrowing money in the future. If you do get a CCJ and you still don't pay, this could ultimately result in bailiffs coming to your home to take your valuable items or even your car. So please don't ignore them, and we'll get to what you should do later in this video. Okay, question number 3. What Robinson Way are not allowed to do? Despite being legally appointed to collect your debt or outright owning your debt, there's several things Robinson Way cannot do when it comes to collecting debts. Knowing what Robinson Way can and can't do will make you feel a lot more comfortable and confident when dealing with them. So here's the things they're legally not allowed to do. They're not allowed to visit your place of work without you giving them specific permission to do so. Before this rule was put in place, some debt collectors would show up while you're working and try and make things awkward for you as a way of pressuring you into paying. And on a similar note, they're not allowed to speak to your neighbors, friends, or family about your debt. Again, this is to stop them from trying to embarrass you or shame you into paying your debt. Robinson Way can't contact you or visit your home at unreasonable times of the day. For phone calls, most people would agree that calls before 8 a.m. are too early and calls after 9 p.m. are too late. But your circumstances might be different. For example, if you work night shifts. If you can't take calls during these certain times, then tell them. They should keep a record and avoid calling you at these times. You can make a complaint if they're calling you at times you've told them to avoid. Next, it's also good to know that they're not allowed to act in a threatening or intimidating way. Also, they should never pressurize you into paying larger installments than you can afford or hitting payment deadlines that are impossible. The regulations also say that they're not allowed to pressure you into selling your home or to take out more credit to pay your debts. And the last thing debt collectors can't do is to pretend to be bailiffs or enforcement agents. Unlike bailiffs, debt collectors can't force their way into your house or refuse to leave when you ask them to. And they're certainly not allowed to take any of your belongings or clamp your car. Okay, question number 4. How long can you be chased for debt? Well, under the Limitation Act of 1980, a creditor has up to 6 years to chase most unsecured unpaid debts, or 12 years for some mortgage debts. This limitation period starts from the time that you last made a payment or when you last acknowledged the debt. Ultimately, debt collectors can't enforce their debts through the courts after 6 years, but if you've already been taken to court and have a CCJ registered against you, then unfortunately there's no end date for how long they can enforce and chase that debt. Okay, last question, then I have a bonus tip on how to potentially write off some of your debt. Question number 5. How do I pay less and come to an agreement with Robinson Way? Well, there's a number of ways you might be able to reduce the amount you pay. If Robinson Way are adding interest and charges to your debt, you could ask them to freeze it to help you get back on track and clear your debts quicker. Debt collectors are more likely to stop or reduce interest and charges if you can prove that you're in financial difficulties. I'd suggest you put together a budget showing your income and essential living costs so you can clearly demonstrate your financial difficulties. You can also use that budget to negotiate reduced payments. Again, for this, you'll need to show why you can't afford the higher repayments. So use that budget to write down your income and essential living costs so you can demonstrate what you can afford. Some debt collectors will only agree to reduce payments for a set period of time. At the end of this set period, they'll want to update on your situation. Other times, they'll agree to a much longer repayment period. All of this will totally depend on the nature of the debt and your individual circumstance. If you have the cash, you could make a full and final settlement offer. This is where you ask if they'll pay a lump sum, if you can pay a lump sum instead of the full balance. In return for that lump sum, some debt collectors will write off the remainder of the debt. And as promised, here's my bonus tip on how you might be able to write off some of your debt. And it's not just with Robinson Way, by the way. If you have debts with other people, there's lots of ways you can significantly reduce your repayments and even write off some of your debt. During my career in the credit card industry, I discovered that there are 7 relatively unheard of debt solutions that are available in the UK. Now, the industry doesn't really advertise these because most of them are either free or low cost. Now, unfortunately, these solutions are not available to everybody. You do need to be in specific circumstances, but there's probably at least one of these 7 solutions that you do qualify for. You could either be paying less than you do already, or maybe even write off some of your debt. To make it simple for you, I've created a free eligibility checker, which I'll show you now. It's really simple. It's 5 simple questions. It takes less than 30 seconds to do. Questions like, what is the total amount of your debt? How many people do you owe money to? And what country do you live in? There's a couple more questions, but it's really quite simple. So do that calculator and find out if you can reduce your repayments and write off some of your debt. I've left a link in the description below, so go and do that now.